Hi everyone, Janelle here, your relationship coach. I am with my very good friend Jude Sandval. He's the founder of Divorced Dads Advocate, and I just thought it would be awesome to have him here to just let's talk about divorce. So let's start with Jude. Tell us about yourself. How did you become, the founder of this company, and what was really your mission in creating this community?
Hey, Janelle, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I never thought that, firstly, I never thought that I would ever be divorced because my parents were divorced and that was not something that was ever. And so I was pretty happy, but that all came crumbling down after 11 years. And I went through a very high conflict divorce. And the subsequent 9.5 years since have been very tumultuous and argumentative. And we've been in and out of court for most of that time and have spent multiple six figures in this entire process, which is absolute insanity. And what I finally came to after going through all of this and a couple of years ago was that there are some resources out there for divorced or divorcing dads specifically, but there's just not a ton, and there's definitely not a one place for them to stop and find that. And so being the father of three daughters who were 6, 4, and 2 when we started the process, and who are now 16, 14, and 12, I've kind of seen the whole thing from beginning to end and wanted to provide a resource for dads where they can come and be in a community that's going to help them, whether they're contemplating going through or post-divorce.
Yeah. So what was that like for you? It sounded like this was a very painful time in your life and you were looking for support, and it sounded like it was not easy to get the support that you were looking for.
Well,
Right.
I don't know about you, but I've never talked to anybody that said was awesome. My divorce was awesome. It was so easy and no problem. And I had no emotions around it. And the breakup's been great since, and co-parenting is perfect. And so, yeah, I never hear that. I don't know about you. And if
Yeah.
anybody listening has, please email me because I want to do a case study on it.
Well, I mean, talking about what we're talking about our own divorces, mine actually was like that. However, I have to say, so we were together. I think it wasn't a long marriage, first of all. I think we
Okay.
were together for about 5 years and married for about almost 3.
Okay.
But you know what? I almost knew like the day we got back from our honeymoon. I'm like, this, like the warning bells already started to go. And so really for me, what didn't work was that I had certain expectations,
Mm,
and I was very clear about what those expectations were. My parents had a really great marriage, and so that's what I envisioned for myself, right? These
right.
parents who, they had a business together, they went to church together, they did everything. Everything was about family. It was beautiful, and that's what I wanted. And so, those were the promises that were made, and it was like almost as though we came home from our honeymoon, and he was like, "I'm done."
Mm.
And he just stopped putting any effort, stopped going to church. He started spending more and more time in the garage he loved to build things, which was great. But hello, your new wife is at home waiting for
Yeah.
you to come into the house.
Let's build our relationship.
But yeah, he
Right.
just loved to do that stuff. And I just felt very duped,
Okay.
like the misrepresented. And so I was very angry. But luckily, we didn't have kids.
Right.
And because we were so early in our relationship, we didn't have any property.
Yeah.
But I remember we were actually at our wedding. It's my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and my mom. My dad's passed away. And we're all sitting around the table at our wedding. And my mom looks over at us playfully and she says, "So, when are the kids coming?"
Yeah.
And my in-laws, who are millionaires, but like the cheapest millionaires you will ever meet, were like, "You guys can't have a kid." I'm like, "Well, why not?" "Well, you guys have debt and you don't own a house."
Oh my.
So all of a sudden we went from, yeah, let's have kids, to now, oh no, we have to have this, this, and this before we have those kids.
Right.
So again, the plan got changed, and I had no say in it. So anyway, at the end of the day, I got to a point where I was just so angry. I found out about this course about, your mind and transforming your life. And I thought, okay, I'm going to bring him with me and I'm going to fix him. I'm going to fix him.
Of course you are.
And I get in the course and he's like not present whatsoever. He's like sleeping during this course. But, I just started to realize like, wow, I have been not taking responsibility for this relationship. I've been making him wrong. I have been not very nice about it. And that was the moment where I just had a chance to just look at him and just say, you know what? I am so sorry for the way I've been judging you and treating you. And you're great the way you are. And it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to get divorced. I'd like to complete this relationship. And what was so amazing, the breakthrough in this, Jude, is that we actually went to the divorce courts together. We signed the papers together. I think our divorce in total cost us $80.
Wow.
Because we didn't need lawyers or, any of that stuff. We went out for dinner. I gave him a kiss on the cheek. And I said, good luck. And I got out of the car. And that was pretty much it.
Right.
Now,
well, it's interesting. So I find something interesting that you said there, because we started this with, I don't think anybody goes through divorce and says, oh, that was great, because you said I was angry and expectations and like all of that stuff is, I would venture to say, and I venture to say this based upon the work that I do with the dads, is that the mental emotional part of it is the most difficult, challenging, painful part of it. And so like going through the process and divorce and all that, there's all of those challenges, but where your head's at and getting through that, I don't think anybody, so you just actually validated what I said, which was, it's challenging. I don't know that anybody says, oh, well, it was no problem. We just figured out we're good and we just are done. Like you go through this process of having to, it's a revelation, right? It's an unfolding of yourself and learning, if you've done the work. Like obviously you've done the work, so you can look back and say, yeah, well, it was this, or it was expectations, and then it was this part, and we talked about things, but we hadn't talked about what our beliefs were, or what our intentions were, or how we're going to go about those, and whether we're going to have kids first or we're going to wait and get the, like all of these different things. You've done the work to look back and understand what that is, which is huge, because if we want another healthy relationship, which I think all of us do, none of us get into a divorce or into a marriage in order to get divorced, but if we want to have another one, we've got to do that work and pay attention to what it is that we brought to the unhealthy what part we brought to the unhealthy dynamic, which I loved what you said, which is, I'm sorry I didn't do this right, because that is one of the only things, is pretty much the only thing that we can control through this whole process is our emotions and how we show up in our behaviors through the process, because we don't know how somebody else. And so maybe that's a good message for men or women listening, because you and I were just talking about the different way that men and women go through the breakups and divorce or whatever. But if you focus on yourself, that's going to make things a lot easier, because if you start thinking about the other person, trying to fix the other person, try to control the situation, perpetuate the unhealthy dynamic that's going on, it's just going to be a complete, let's not say complete, but it's going to make things much more challenging.
I have a saying, and it's one of the sayings that I live by myself. And also when I coach my couples, I say, and it goes like this: pain and suffering only exists when we resist what is so. And so I had to kind of just stop and go, there was a moment in this course that I realized that there was this pattern that I had with all of my relationships. And in this course, we were really like encouraged to go back to, when was the first time we felt this way? If we're dealing with unworthiness, we're dealing with trust issues, we're dealing with abandonment issues, we were invited to really look at, well, is it the person that you're dealing with right in front of you that is perpetuating or triggering that? Or is it coming from something else from your childhood that you actually haven't resolved? And what I realized, like, oh yeah, I totally have this thing that, I've been bullied, there's been abuse, there's been, some pretty nasty stuff that's happened in my childhood that I haven't really dealt with. And so guess what? As an adult, I was attracting people in my life that I already kind of maybe subconsciously knew that they were not going to treat me well. Because it's no coincidence that none of my boyfriends were liked by my parents, right? They didn't like any of them. So it's like, why? Now I know. It's like, yeah, they saw something that I didn't see. But to your earlier point, I think what's so beautiful about, what we just talked about was that, yeah, when you have a third party, when you have support, when you have someone else to kind of be an observer of you looking, they're outside looking in, there is so much gold that you can find when you're so close to it. And even for me, even as a coach, when I'm dealing with my own stuff, sometimes it's really hard to kind of detach and look at it objectively, right? Yep. And that's why we have healthcare professionals and coaches and people like us who really, really, have a specific kind of listening and a specific kind of viewpoint and experience in all of this. And so I don't think I would have been able, people go, oh yeah, Janelle, that was like, 1 in a million. Yeah, it is 1 in a million. But the thing is that I actually took responsibility for myself and I go, okay, what am I doing wrong? Where is it that I need to be improved? What are the blind spots that I have about myself? Because you're right. I knew that even if I did leave this marriage and I, went on to another relationship, I knew that something was going to happen because the common denominator is me.
Right. Well, and I love what you just said about the common denominator being me, but also then if you're doing that, wouldn't you say that the pain and suffering then becomes optional? Because if you're focusing on that, and I say this having done the opposite of what you did. So I didn't do the work. I didn't make the effort. I didn't understand that what part I brought, the relational, unhealthy relational dynamic, and I just perpetuated it, which then that perpetuates the pain and suffering. If you do what you just described and what we're talking about in trying to identify that, focus on yourself, know what these triggers are, what your emotions mean, all that stuff, then you have the choice of whether that becomes pain and suffering. Yeah. And I would say that it doesn't, because then you're making a choice to move in a healthier direction. Now, that's not to say that it's not going to be painful having this stuff come up or dealing with childhood trauma or any trauma or anything that might, or abuse or anything else that may have happened in your life. It's just to say that you're making the choice of what you're going to do with that. And if you're moving that towards an intention that you want, which might be a healthy relationship or just be healthy or whatever it is, then the pain and suffering becomes optional.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's because we resist what's happening, right? Especially when you're the one who's being divorced, like you had no choice in the matter, right? It's so easy to go, no, this shouldn't be happening. And we gotta fix it. And a lot of times it's too late. And, the men that I've met that are in that situation where they reach out to me and go, Janelle, help me save my marriage. I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? Like, my wife just filed for divorce and she filed a restraining order. And I was like, I don't actually know I can help you, right?
Yeah. Well, that most often happens to the men because the men are the ones that are served 70+% of the time. Yeah. And so that's it's a big issue because for men, that is a challenge in the sense that they obviously, if they're calling you, know that there was something wrong or that they did something wrong in a relationship. They just have not focused on it or haven't been forced to focus on it. Now this is forcing them to focus and do something about it, and it's a wake up call. And unfortunately, sometimes the damage is way too bad to fix things, but not all the time. If they're and so here's the message I don't want to be getting out there to the women is that file for divorce to make your husband wake up.
Yeah.
And he will wake up, because that's not the way to go about it.
No.
I mean, there can be damage done in that, but both parties understand that there's if that is something that you're contemplating, there is an unhealthy relational dynamic that's going on that somebody like Janelle can look at from that third party perspective and say, oh, well, have you considered that? Or maybe try this or do something, because you might be surprised at how easy it is. And I don't want to say easy, not in the sense that it's easy to change your behaviors and your mindset and the work that you're going to have to do, but easy in identifying what it is, and then being able to take action steps with a coach. It's kind of like I say this all the time, and I'm not preaching to the choir with you, is we get coaches to help us with athletics, or if we're in a sport to get better at a skill for a sports, and to coach a whole team. We have we have coaches for individual positions, and then for the entire offensive line, and then for the whole team. Like there's coaches down to every single level.
Yeah, even in corporate.
In corporate and in music, right? In creative, the same, like instruments, and then quiet. Like, so we have that but we don't do that in our personal lives. And it's just crazy when we think about it, because it works really well. You and I know that in doing this every single day, but man, just get somebody and take the time to sit down with somebody else. If you're both willing to save it, and you'll be absolutely amazing. And you know, Janelle, because I refer anybody that has my first question is, do you think that there is an iota of an opportunity at saving this? And if they say yes, I send them to you, to talk about and try to uncover what it is. Because trust me, going through the divorce and then life post-divorce is going to be much more work than trying to unravel maybe something here or there, or an unhealthy relational dynamic that you've developed, that you have a whole life built around with somebody. It's much easier to do that than go through the divorce. And I say that having done it myself. I say that having seen this every single day with the dads that I work with. So if there is that iota, call Janelle.
Yeah, thank you.
Or call me, and then I'll have you call me.
So I have to say something to you. So you know that person that you referred to me recently. So Jay, this is what he says to me. He says, well, you know, I think divorce is the best choice for us. And, you know, I don't think divorce is going to impact our family. You know, we're going to work really well together, and there's going to be no impact on our 3 girls. And yet they're not speaking to each other, but he just is convinced that there's no way that this is going to, because you and I, you know me. I am a huge advocate for children. Huge. I think that sometimes we forget how our own behavior impacts our children, not only in a direct way as far as like if we're fighting, but even when the energy in the house, the tension, the awkwardness, even that like feelings of alienation when we're now like roommates, where we stop just actually being partners, they can feel that. You know, and so when I'm listening to him saying, oh, this is not going to happen to us, we're not going to be a statistic, it makes my heart sad, because I feel like he's in denial. And
I appreciate his optimism, though.